Look, we all know that APIs are now critical infrastructure. We kind of live in an API driven world. But here is something that many folks still don't know. APIs have just become the single most exploited attack surface in 2026. And it's not just about traditional threats anymore. The agentic AI explosion is changing everything. Every AI agent, every automation, every intelligence system, they all talk through APIs. So if you're a CISO thinking API security is just another checklist item, we are here to change your mind. Today I'm talking with Tim Erlin, security strategist at Wallarm, about their new API threat stat report and why API security is now essentially AI security. Tim, it's great to have you on the show.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Of course, we are going to talk about this report, but before that, quickly remind our viewers, what is Wallarm all about?
Well, not surprisingly, Wallarm is about API security and AI security because the two are very tightly connected. So our focus is really on detecting and stopping API attacks.
Can you talk about for how long you folks have been doing this report? What I want to understand is that if you have been doing this report for a bit, then we can see some patterns, we can see some trends, and we can see, hey, these are something which are alarming, or you're like, "Look, we have been seeing this thing, so this is totally normal. This is what we were expecting." So talk a bit about the report and history.
I think the first API threat stats report we did was in 2022, and we've done an annual report, and we've done some quarterly reports, in between. So I went back and looked. I think this is the 15th report that we've done, 15th or 16th overall. And of course, our methodology, our ability to do analysis has improved over time. So we get better data now than we used to get for sure.
Now let's talk about some of the findings, and based on the past trend, let's first talk about what is alarming for you, and then we'll talk about where you'll say, hey, we have been seeing this, so this is normal, natural for us, but suddenly this happened, which we had not seen in the last 15 reports, and this is really shocking.
Yeah, I try not to be alarming in the analysis because I don't think it serves the industry particularly well. But there are trends that are surprising and trends that are not surprising might be the way to think about it. So on the not surprising side, part of the report is that we analyze the attack data that we see in the Wallarm platform, so real attack data, and we put that into what we call the API Threat Stats Top 10. The types of attacks that sit at the top of the top 10 are very consistent year over year. Types of injections like SQL injection are almost always near the top. This year, they were number 2. And then issues around authentication and authorization are almost always at the top as well. I think they're positions 3 and 4 this year. And so what we see is a clear pattern over time that attackers continue to focus on the easiest to exploit types of attacks at scale. Now, those attacks may or may not be successful, but they continue to drive their attacks with these sort of easy to scale, not too complex attacks. That's the not surprising side. On the more surprising side is the pace at which AI as a risk surface has escalated related to APIs. So there's significant overlap between AI and API vulnerabilities that are published. It's 36%. So 36% of the AI vulnerabilities that were published last year are also API vulnerabilities. The AI vulnerabilities themselves grew by about 400% last year. So we see this incredible growth in terms of AI risk in the industry, and AI risk comes along with it. They're just tightly connected because you can't deploy and run AI without APIs.
When it comes to API security, there are so many zombie APIs, so many different things that happen where you're like, things are getting better. Or you looking at this report, you're like, because of AI, because of agentic AI, things are actually going to get worse, where even organizations like Wallarm, you may have to lose your sleep at night, or you're like, no, things are actually improving, security, everybody understand. Now it's a board level discussion because CISOs are involved, so things are good.
Yeah, the state of the art in defense, the best practices for cyber defense are always trailing the innovation in the sort of the attacker landscape. So API security seems to be getting better. And when I say better, what I mean is that organizations more organizations understand what risks they have. They're putting in place controls to try and address those risks. And that's improvement. But at the same time, we see this massive adoption of AI, which organizations don't have a handle on. They don't have visibility into what AI is deployed in their environment. You mentioned, I think you mentioned shadow APIs or zombie APIs. The same applies to AI, shadow AI in your environment. And so while we're improving around API security, I think we're trying to catch up. We're really working hard to catch up on the AI side of things as well.
When I was listening to you, it kind of sometimes feels like that when we talk about AI security and when we look at uh, adoption of AI and everything that we do with AI is kind of through API. So you can also use the term is more or less like AI security. Can you break that down? What because we need to break things down for I mean CISOs are smart people. They do understand these things, but we sometimes do have to not only bring the message out, we have to hammer it again and again and again. So talking about AI security and why people need to understand that connection.
Yeah, you'll find the phrase in the report that AI security is API security, and we really try and repeat that as much as possible because we the data tells us it's true. When you think about interactions with AI, whether it's with an AI chatbot, an LLM, or an AI agent or agentic AI, that interaction that you have is always mediated through an API of some kind. And then those tools, those AI tools that take some action, usually you would think of them as agents, but they might be applications and AI apps inside of another application. When they take an action, their actions are mediated again through APIs. So not only do the AI tools that we're deploying depend on a foundation of APIs, they're also driving an increase in the number of APIs that exist to support them. If you want to deploy an MCP server that provides a set of tools to MCP clients, behind the scenes, those tools are going to be likely APIs that you now build and deploy and develop. So more and more APIs are being built as well. That's the connection that we're really trying to make.
When we talk about security, things have evolved. In past 10 years ago, before the whole cloud native things emerged, it was someone else's problem. It was an afterthought. Nobody wants to talk to security folks. But now things have changed. Security, we start talking about security when we are writing the first line of code. And all these, AI companies also, they are putting security on the forefront, where you're like, we don't have to worry about the awareness about AI security or API security. Organizations already know that we only have to provide them with tools or processes, or you feel that no, we still have to do that awareness.
It's always a spectrum, of course. Organizations are different, but I do think, based on the interactions that I have with folks in the industry with CISOs, that by and large, organizations are more aware that cybersecurity is really a business problem. And that's the connection you want to make, right? The goal is to understand how security incidents, security risk impact your business. Because, a secure business is, of course, one that doesn't exist, one that's offline, but then it's not achieving its mission, whether that's to generate revenue or to provide a service. So how do you do that securely? I think that connection is increasingly being made. But it is still a challenge for CISOs to connect the controls they put in place to the business value they're delivering. How do you tie this particular control to the revenue that it's protecting? API, actually, the increase in the use of APIs as sort of critical to generating revenue makes that connection a little easier, because you can start talking about, well, these APIs are responsible for this revenue and we've put these controls on them. And I think CISOs are starting to do that now. They're starting to see that connection. Not all the tools are able to do that for them, so it is still a challenge in the market, but there is improvement there for sure.
As Sam Altman recently said, that every company is an API company. I remember early days, like 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago, when we talk about that, we used to say that, hey, it doesn't matter what kind of company you are, you have to have a website or software studio. So every company became a software company. And then, so things started evolving. Now every data, so it's hard to say that we live in a singular world. We live in a data-driven world. We live in an API-driven world. We are soon be living in AI-driven world. We won't even talk about coding. We'll just say AI. So these are some of the very, very core and foundational things, but folks may or may not be aware. So when he says that every company is an API company, what does that mean to you as a security strategist? And more importantly, what can company actually do to ensure their API security? Because as you rightly said, that this, I mean, if you can paraphrase this, the safest car is the one which has never been driven, is sitting in your garage. But if you're running any, you are using APIs to connect to all the services. And it's not just about AI, whether you're Google service, whatever you're using, it is all connected through APIs.
I mean, I really do love that quote. I think it's true that every company is an API company, whether they intend to be, whether they know it or not. The challenge that it brings up, and the thing that I worry about, is as we move towards adopting AI as the primary, let's just say the primary interface layer for doing business, right? So instead of having to understand that there's an API that I'm connecting to, having to write code to connect to that API, or having to build my own API, now I can just interact with AI, and the APIs are all in the background. So they become less, if you're sort of AI native, the API centricity of your infrastructure becomes less obvious. So when I talk to people who are in development or API security, they intrinsically sort of understand that the connection between AI and APIs. If you talk to people who are focused on AI, they don't even think about it because the AI layer takes care of it for them. But that means from a security standpoint, we have to think about the risk across the entire stack, from the APIs up to the AI layer, and I think that's a significant challenge for security practitioners and organizations today.
If I reflect on this discussion and the trend that we are seeing, APIs have become the top attack surface. The threat landscape is changing. If a CISO has read this report or is watching this discussion, what are the top three takeaways you want CISOs to remember from this report? Can you also talk about how is AI, API security a business problem, not just a tech problem?
Yeah, I mean, if I think about it in terms of the top three takeaways from the report itself, the first is that API security is a business risk. That what we're really talking about is a business risk, and I think that's important to keep in mind, because when you ask the question, is what they're doing enough? The measurement of is it enough needs to be tied to the objective of that business. That's the key. The other is the message that we talked about before, which is that AI security is API security. Understanding that connection between AI and APIs is critical for a CISO to understand how they can, lead an AI transformation securely. Any CISO who's partnered up with their CIO on an AI transformation project is looking at how can they deliver it securely, and I think that connection is really important as well. And then I think the last key takeaway is that the new risk boundary is really about behavior. So when we look at the report, the data in the report, yes, there are lots of sort of not sophisticated, high volume attacks, but where we see the most interesting developments in terms of API attacks is around more business logic, behavior-based attacks. So attackers are leveraging the way an application works as opposed to vulnerabilities in the code. And that sort of behavior aspect really is shifting the risk boundary. And I think that's the third key takeaway.
A couple of times you mentioned that AI, API security is a business problem, not just a tech problem. Can you just, because sometimes when we look at security, there is no direct impact on ROI or things like that. It's more or less like having an airbag or a parachute. You needed it when you actually were in trouble. By that time, it's too late. Once you get attacked, your name is in the newspaper, your brand, your image is tarnished forever. It will take, many, many years to recover from that. So there will be business loss. But can you just once again rehammer that why AI API security is a business problem, and more folks should understand it should become a board level discussion, not a developer level discussion.
Yeah. So if you think about any organization exists to accomplish something. They have some North Star, some mission. And, for any for-profit organization, it's to generate revenue and be profitable. If it's a nonprofit, they have some service-oriented mission. They're there to deliver something. If it's a government, they're similar to a nonprofit in that sense. So if you're a security practitioner inside an organization, you need to understand that your goal is not perfect security. It's to support that organization's mission. And I'll use the for-profit example because in some ways it's the easiest. When you look at the infrastructure that you're protecting it in order to allow the organization to continue delivering its product or its service that it sells in order to generate revenue. APIs often have a very direct tie to revenue, so it's a clear connection. Like, I need to protect this API because if it's compromised, we lose revenue. Compliance is a great connector because compliance, I think about compliance as auditors as attackers that tell you what they're going to attack and how much they're going to take, but it has a clear financial impact. Connecting to that financial impact is what allows you to make risk mitigation decisions. Because if a security incident or the lack of a security control has no financial impact on the organization, then there's no reason to do it. There's no reason to worry about that risk. You can just accept it. It has no impact. And often we don't have a clear connection between the risk and the impact. But boards are very used to making those types of risk mitigation or risk tolerance decisions. They just don't have the information to do it for cybersecurity. And that's where the CISO comes in. That's how you bridge that gap. So I think that's the way that I would explain it.
Now, we have been talking about this report, and the idea of these kind of reports is to see the state of things and then do something to fix it. So can you talk a bit about what is Wallarm doing to actually help organizations mitigate or contain some of these risks?
Yeah. So the genesis of the API Threat Stats report was really ultimately to improve our product. In order for us to detect and block attacks, we needed to understand what was happening in the sort of the threat landscape, in the attacker environment. And so we started this report with that in mind, and then we realized it was useful for everybody else. So fundamentally, what Wallarm does is discover all of the APIs in your environment, then detect and actually block the attacks that it sees. That includes, sort of the simple attacks like injections, but also the business logic attacks. We also provide API security testing so that you can identify and remove risks before your APIs get pushed to production. And then we provide sort of a set of governance functions. You can create policies, you can enforce API specifications so that you can manage your API environment and your AI environment more effectively.
It's beginning of the year. It's like sliding very fast, but what are some of the things that are in your folks' pipeline? We're looking at the threats, emergence of new threats API. These are the things that you folks are working. It could be new reports. Don't disclose too much. We'll talk about it when it's ready, but just tease us what Wallarm is working on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I said that the genesis of the report is to help us build better product, and it still is. We still use it that way. So when we look at the trends in the report, obviously we're very focused on the developments around AI, the deployment of capabilities like MCP, and that's where you're going to see, new innovation from Wallarm is how do we expand the capabilities? How do we enable CISOs and CIOs to sort of seamlessly drive that AI transformation, to securely drive that AI transformation? That's where the work is, I think, for us.
Since we are talking about AI security, API security, we are looking at how AI may be making things worse. But how about using AI to improve security? What are you folks doing in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're adopting AI, similarly to everyone else. So there are ample opportunities from, enabling our developers to move faster or to do more with their capabilities, to providing AI features in the product, using AI to analyze the traffic and the attack patterns. Those are things that all exist today and will continue evolving along those lines as well.
Tim, thank you so much for joining me and sharing these insights for Wallarm Threat Stats Report. The reality is that API security is now AI security, and it is something that every enterprise need to take seriously. And thank you for sharing all those insights that will help them to understand the risk, threat, and what they should do about it. So thank you for your time today, and I look forward to the next discussion.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
And for those watching, if you're facing similar AI security or API security challenges, make sure to check out Wallarm's report and their solutions. And don't forget to subscribe to TFIR, like this video, and share with your team. Thanks for watching.